Hi, Claire Carter. Thank you so much for coming and joining me on the Mary-Jess Meets podcast. How are you doing today?
Hello, I am really well, thank you. And I've so been looking forward to this. I can't believe, given our history together, this is just sort of the next stage, the next chapter of our journey, which is quite nice. How are you?
Yeah. I've been really excited about this as well because we first met in Gloucester when you were working there, and you were interviewing me, and I was thinking, who are the best people to get on my podcast? And I was like, wow, Claire Carter. Whenever I speak to you on radio, you're the one interviewing me. It'd be nice to turn the tables round to get to know more about you.
I'm not ready for this. There's only ever been one other person in this world that's turned the tables round on me and it didn't end well. So goodness knows what's going to happen with this. But, yeah, it's very bizarre to be on this side. I have to admit, it's very bizarre.
That other person you're talking about, that was Emma Sams, wasn't it? When she asked you a question when you were interviewing her.
Yeah, she knew she did it. I know she did it on purpose. She knew it would put me off, and it did. It was quite funny. So yeah, Emma Sams won, Claire Carter nil.
Until next time, the saga and the battle continues. Yeah, no, but Emma's so lovely. I've worked with her on a short film, and it was such a joy to work with her. She's such an amazing person. But yeah, you get to talk to so many amazing people with your job being a radio presenter. But we were saying just before recording the podcast that with radio you get such a short amount of time to talk to people. You're on such a strict schedule. And so that's another reason why I've been really looking forward to this, is because then I get to really dive into your story and people get to know you, because they hear you on the radio nearly every day, and yet we barely get to know about you. So this is why it's exciting. This is why I'm excited about this podcast. So
that's the reason why I became a presenter, though, because this is what worries me.
Well, let's start from the beginning of your radio career and just ask, what made you decide to be a radio presenter? What gave you that idea?
It was actually, it was a conversation that I was having with my mum in the summer of so long ago now, when I was choosing kind of A-levels and was about to go into sixth form. And my mum kind of was asking me, do you want to start looking at UCAS books, thinking about universities, you do your AS levels, and whether they still have AS levels, I've got no idea now.
Yeah, and AS and then A levels, I think it's the...
There we go. So they still do that. Now, I was adamant from the age of 10 that I was going to be a PE teacher and I was going to play netball for England. And that was all I ever wanted to do. Love netball, sport was my entire life. And then as I got sort of through GCSE and then the first part of my AS levels for PE, I realised quite a lot of it was classroom based. And it was all study, it was all anatomy and the psychology of sport, and write an essay about this. And if you want to be a PE teacher, you've got to go and do sports science. And that was just a whole load of essays. And I literally just wanted to go out and play sport. That's what I just loved it. I loved being active, being outdoors. And I loved watching sport, and I was always watching it on the TV. And my mum said to me, she just went, do you really want to go and do this and study and be a PE teacher? And I kind of thought, not if I can't do anything. I feel like I just need to be practical and out there. And I don't know if I want to be behind a desk. Anyway, so she was having a chat, and my mum literally just said to me, she went, well, you love watching sport on the telly. Why don't you look at broadcasting? And she said, you're a bit of a class clown, which I was through sort of, especially the later part of my secondary school life. And I was a bit of a mimic, and, and she just said, why don't you think about, television or sports media? And I went, what, like Sue Barker? And I'll never forget, one of the best things my mum ever said to me, she went, well, someone's got to do it. And I thought, part of me thought, okay, that may sound like, well, just anybody can walk in and do it. But what she meant was, somebody can do that job. Anybody can do that job. So why can't it be you? And I was really fortunate at a time when broadcast journalism was just really beginning to become a university degree. And the University of Gloucestershire, because obviously I'm not from the west side of the world of our country, and they were just starting this broadcast journalism degree. So I had a look. I had no background or skills in media whatsoever, but I think they were desperate, so they took me, and basically the rest is kind of history, really. So I sort of feel I was a bit lucky, but yeah, it was all sort of slightly on a whim, if I can say that.
I'm not sure. It sounds like you're definitely blessed with a radio voice. So
That's grown. I don't know if you found this, but if you listen to archive audio of me when I first started broadcasting for Radio Gloucestershire, I sound like a 12-year-old girl from Essex. Um, I'm not from Essex, I'm from Southeast London, but my voice was so much higher, and as I've gotten older and as I've clearly talked more, my voice has gotten a lot lower. So that's definitely come with time, I'd say.
Well, I love your radio voice. I think listening to you is great because you're
Oh,
so well pronounced in all your words. You know, you can hear you even if the signal's not good on the radio. The way you talk is very nice, relaxing, easy listening voice. So I still get my family members going, "Oh, you're talking to Claire. Tell her to come back to Radio Gloucester. I'm not happy that she left." I still get people saying that to me.
oh, that's so no. I do. I miss Gloucestershire. I feel very blessed to be in Somerset, and I've only ever worked really in those two stations. So I've been with the Beeb now for almost 15 years, and I feel very, very lucky for those 15 years to have been with Gloucestershire and Somerset so far. Because they've been wonderful places to work, just great people and a great audience as well. The Gloucestershire folk and the Somerset folk, I know that they're kind of separated a bit by Bristol, but I think the kind of the friendliness is there amongst them. So yeah, I've been very fortunate.
Yeah, and they're great radio stations to work for, like you say, with the people that are there as well as the audiences, because I've gone in and spoken to a few of the various people at different radio stations over my years of being a singer, and you just get the nicest welcome when you go in, you know, especially when I know you quite well now. I'm like, "All right, mate, how you doing?"
Yeah, make yourself a cup of tea, it's absolutely fine. I'll never forget when I found out that you were down this way, and I can't remember, I have a feeling it was a colleague that said, "Oh, I think Mary-Jess is living in Taunton," and I was like, "Mary-Jess living in Taunton? What do you mean?" And then yeah, all of a sudden I was straight into my news editor room, and I was like, "I think I've got somebody that I want to get on my show." Like immediately, I thought Mary-Jess in Somerset. So yeah, it was great to know that you were down this way.
Yeah, you too, absolutely. Because every time I spoke to you in Gloucester, I really felt like that interview was one of the easiest interviews that I had to do, because you're just so easy to talk to. And I always felt like we got on really well. And so then to have you in this neck of the woods was quite exciting. I was like, "Oh, that's good. We must have a cup of tea."
Great,
But
great.
yeah, I was coming in to talk to you. I can't remember what it was now, coming in to talk to you. And it was like getting back together with an old friend where you'd like hadn't seen each other for a while, but just picked up where you left off. And I think that's what makes you such a great radio presenter as well, is because you've got to talk to so many different people on the show, being able to make them feel at ease and like they are a friend that, you know, you're just quite happy chatting to is really nice. It's a nice way to relax people when going on radio can be quite nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and I think I have to admit, I think sometimes we as presenters can forget that because we're so used to the microphones being in front of us, that for people that obviously aren't used to it, to sit down or to know that you're about to go live and that, you know, potentially thousands of people are listening to you, it is quite daunting. And that's certainly one of the skills that I've really tried to work on. And an old boss of mine, he once said to me, you know, you have to make somebody feel welcomed, comfortable, and ready to tell you potentially some of their deepest emotions or most personal of stories, literally in the space of about a minute and a half, and sometimes not even that. And I think that's one thing that lockdown has definitely taken away, that ability to have people come into the studio, because of course with social distancing we're not allowing it. So to not see that person coming in and seeing them face to face has definitely been quite hard. So yeah, it's a tough skill to try and hone.
Absolutely. And like you say, you've only got that short amount of time on the radio to get that story out of someone and to make them feel comfortable. It must be so tricky. Like, it's a good skill to have, to be able to ask the right questions to get that information in the space of 1.5 minutes. I mean, I'm lucky I've got like an hour or however long we want to talk on this. But yeah, having only that really short amount of time must be really difficult.
Yeah, and that's where I have to praise my team as well, because obviously a lot is set up for the show before we go on air the day after. So a lot's done the day before. And the team that work on the show, I've got reporters and producers, they're fantastic at speaking to these guests. They obviously write briefs that then I read so that I'm aware of the stories. And, you know, sometimes, majority of the time, the team will be like, okay, ask this question. And so you get a great feel for who it is that you're about to speak to because of the work that, you know, the great reporters and producers have done. But I think the joy, and especially we found this through the shows that we've done over the last 6 months for lockdown, that actually if you know you've got a great guest and you know that they're about to reveal something or say something, or they have just revealed something that you simply can't ignore, then you have to kind of look at your producer and go, you're going to need to tell the next story that we're going to be a bit late because, you know, I can't be quick with this. Or you know, if somebody's just about to reveal something that is shocking, or, you know, you have to stick with it. You can't just sort of ignore it and then move on. And I think that's what I love about radio. It can kind of turn any minute, live radio, to something so bizarre that you never expected to happen. Yeah, that's a great feeling. I mean, everything else goes to pot and all your timings go out the window, but that can be the joy of live broadcasting.
Yeah, it sounds like it certainly keeps you on your toes. Have you got any stories off the top of your head that you can share with us?
So it's questions like this that I was dreading. Stories off the top of my head. I remember there was a guy, it's actually probably, I don't know if you ever find this, but when people ask you stories of best practice, the ones that you first think of are the ones of worst practice, the ones that you learn from. And as a young broadcaster, I'm still young, thank you, but as a younger broadcaster in my early days, I was chatting to a guy who he was talking about his life story, and he was talking about work that he was doing for a charity. And my producer was busy trying to set up a whole load of other stuff whilst he was listening across to the show. So I knew that he was busy because there was other things going on. And this guy sat down and he took the conversation in a way I was never expecting in a million years. And he started talking about, and I know this is getting really serious now, but it was the first thing that did come into my mind because it was my greatest lesson as a broadcaster. He started talking about when he realised he wanted to take his own life. And I remember sitting there going,
holy moly,
whoa, as in kind of, you know, where did that come from? And because you're wearing headphones, your producer can talk to you through what I call the glass, because they're in the ops room. And he'd been busy taking phone calls and doing other stuff. And he'd looked at the time, my producer, and realised that we needed to get to the travel news. And he buzzed me going, we need to go to the travel news. We need to get to travel news. We need to get to travel news. So of course I was like, but this guy's just told me this. And you're telling me this. And that was the prime moment when I should have listened to my gut instinct and just said, I don't care about the travel news. We can record the travel. We can do something else with the travel. You know, I need to. But anyway, I was young and, you know, impressionable by the people I was working with. So I was like, right, we'll come back to that. Here's the travel news. And then, but you just kind of lost a momentum there. You lost an emotion because of a bad choice by me. But that's what I'm talking about when these interviews just completely go in a different direction. You just have to kind of remember, as you said, that it's you and that person, and you've kind of sparked up this conversation and this connection, and you've got to act like the microphones aren't there. And when those moments come and they hit, and that's very, very powerful radio. Very powerful radio.
That's such a vulnerable thing to say when thousands of people could be listening as well. Like the bravery of that person to actually say something like that on radio. I mean, I'm hoping that, I'm guessing that they're okay now and they were happy talking about it.
And I think that's what led them to want to do this, because they then went on to do charity work because they wanted to help other people who were perhaps going through the situation that they had done, that they'd been through earlier on. But I think that's probably the part of my job that I love the most. Quite often when I go out and do talks, so I go into schools, or at least used to, the question that I get is, who's the most famous person that you've interviewed? How many famous people have you interviewed? How many about? And don't get me wrong, famous people are great and they're good fun and it's nice to say and talk about. But the interviews that have affected me the most are the everyday people who, are just like you and other people listening, and they get up, they go to work, they have families, they have issues, they have problems, and they're just general members of the public. 100%, they're always the ones that affect me more and that stick in my mind more than anything else.
Okay, go on then. What else can you tell us? Because I want to know your story.
They're probably all really sad. I remember a lady called Camilla, who was one of the first people that I met here, actually, when I first moved to Somerset. So I've been here for about 4.5 years, over 4.5 years. And there is a charity called St Margaret's Hospice, which people may have heard of. And I remember they were doing just a big kind of drive, really, to point people in the direction of their charity. And they said, look, we've got a lady that wants to speak about her experience of going through the hospice. Her name's Camilla. She's 60 years old. She's a teacher. And she's dying. She's got cancer. There's nothing that they can do. But we've asked, do you want to talk? And so she said, yeah. So I went down and I met her 3 times. We recorded 3 interviews. And we have these microphones that you literally just hit record and you sit there and I just sat there and listened. And I just wanted, I think all I said was, tell me about your life or something like that. And she told me about becoming a teacher, finding her husband and having their children and being here in the county and what she loved and enjoyed. And I remembered we'd been talking for about an hour and a half. And I remember saying to her, loads of people will be listening to this, myself included, going, you're 60, you are a lovely lady, you are a teacher, and you've affected the lives of thousands of pupils that will remember you. Aren't you angry? Aren't you just angry that this has happened to you? And I'll never forget, she just said, people say, it always happens to the nice one, or you're so unlucky. And she just went, but I'm not unlucky. She said, I'm lucky to have had the life that I've lived. And she said, and it's got to be someone. Why not me? And that just really struck me, because I think we've all been there with close ones or loved ones when you think, why them? And the way she just went, why not me? And you suddenly go, well, yeah, that's how random the world is. I mean, look at what we're going through at the moment. Everything is kind of random. And she really, I don't know, that just really hit me. And yeah, that conversation, meeting her will always stay with me. And then there's kids that are just overachievers and wonderful talkers that go out and what was it, 2 days ago, I spoke to some 7-year-old girl who's just cycled 100 miles in 2 days so that she can raise money for the WWF, because she loves wildlife. And she says, we need to protect this world and I want to save all the wildlife. And she's 7. And you're like, come on, I was watching Saved by the Bell when I was 7. Saving wildlife. I mean, yeah, people are amazing. We can't forget that.
Yeah, and those stories are perfect examples. And it also shows the breadth of amazingness that you can get across a whole population when you're talking about somebody who's 60 years old facing something so unimaginable, and then a 7-year-old girl doing that amazing bike ride. I mean, that's fantastic. Fair play to it. Yeah, what was I doing when I was 7?
Singing, I'm guessing.
Saved by the Bell. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. But we kind of skirted past your getting into radio, because you said about going to university, and then we didn't get to hear more of the story. So I'd like to take you back and just ask you about what it was like at the University of Gloucestershire, and then your degree and how you got into radio from there.
Yeah, so the broadcast journalism degree was great because it looked at kind of all aspects, as you imagine, of broadcast journalism. So that was TV, radio, and we did kind of touch on print and online media. And I remember one of the modules in my 2nd year was to find a work placement. I'm going to be really honest, I wasn't the best pupil or student when it came to sort of being productive and academic. Like my brother and sister, well, my sister was sort of the brains of the family. She's the brains of the family. So maybe I didn't apply myself as well as I should have done. And I remember all these people were getting work placements at goodness knows where, CNN and, all this sort of stuff, because they knew people abroad. And I was like, oh, I'll sort one out. Maybe I'll defer the module. And I just remember my course lecturer going, don't defer. Do not defer this module, because you just need to get it done, get a week or 2 weeks under your belt, get some work experience. And she said, look, I'll give you the number of Rachel Jones, who was the press officer, the main press officer for the University of Gloucestershire. Because the idea was you just, get something that was to do with the media in some way, shape or form. So she said, give her a call. So I gave Rachel Jones a call and I said, look, I've got to get some work experience, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she said, yep, sure. Come and work with us for 2 weeks. So this was the PR side of media. This was them promoting the university, but also, you know, trying to get on board with radio stations and TV stations, you know, getting stories out there. So it was writing press releases and, you know. So I went to work with her for 2 weeks, and Rachel Jones was just the loveliest person that you could ever ask for when it comes to work experience managers. So we had a laugh and we got to know each other. And near the end of the work experience, she said to me, she sent me an email and she went, look, BBC Radio Gloucestershire have sent me an email because they're after applicants for something called the BLAST scheme. I think it was called, yeah, BLAST scheme.
Okay.
Which was the BBC's own work experience. So it was to go and work in a local radio station as a sports reporter for 2 months during the summer of 2006.
A sports reporter, hello.
And so Rachel Jones, who I'd gotten to know over these 2 weeks, and she'd gotten to know what I liked and what I wanted to, well, at least what I think I wanted to do. And she said, look, I think maybe you should go for this. And she said, I know you're not from Gloucestershire, but you may find that the pool is a little bit smaller than if you applied in London for this gig. So I was like, actually, that makes sense. So anyway, so I applied for this 2 month internship, whatever you want to call it, apprenticeship. And I had an interview. So I had to find Radio Gloucestershire on the, what was it, the 94 bus from Cheltenham, where my student digs were. And yeah, and they gave me the position. Met Mark Jones and Ian Randall, who worked there at the time, who were just great. And they said, yeah, do you want to come and work for free for the BBC for 2 months, which is classic BBC, can I say? But of course, you're not going to turn it down when you're in the summer just before your third year. And yeah, I worked 6 days a week. They threw me in at the deep end. And I remember one of my first stories was, I've forgotten his name. Ian Randall was going to kill me. He was Cheltenham Town Football Club's captain. I was going to say Jamie Vardy then, but it wasn't Vardy. I've totally forgotten his name. Anyway, it was his testimonial. And Ian Randall sent me over there. I was so nervous. My hand was shaking like this with the microphone trying to record people. But those 2 months, everybody there was brilliant. And literally, I then stayed on as a freelancer. They started paying me to do sports Vox Pops. So I'd go to Gloucester Rugby, I'd go to Cheltenham Town, Forest Green, I'd collect Vox Pops of what the crowd thought. What do you think of the game? Oh, it's brilliant. Go Gloucester. You know, all of that sort of stuff. I was that person asking people for their thoughts on the game. And literally, it just went from there. They offered me my first sort of full-time casual contract, if you like, 4 days after I handed in my dissertation. I started working for the BBC full-time, and yeah, I literally haven't looked back.
I like how you call it a full-time casual thing, because they seem like they contradict each other quite well, those terms.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting line of work when it comes to the contracts that you have. You can be a freelance, which to me always said you've got to do your own taxes. And well, given how productive I was in finding work experience in the first place, I knew I was not going to be great at doing my own taxes. But then you can be what they call a casual, or at least what it was back then, where they do all of that stuff, but it's not technically a full-time gig. But I mean, like I say, having said that, I was pretty much working. I worked every week solidly for the best part of 2 years in the first sort of go of my career, because you don't turn down stuff. Do you want to do this? Yeah. Do you want to work Christmas Day? Absolutely. You do it all. You say yes, and then you figure out how to do it later.
It's funny, you sound like a self-employed person, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
That's what we all do. Can you do this? Yes.
Yeah.
What is it? How do I do it?
Then you freak out and try and phone a whole load of people to find out how to do it.
Yeah, or what it is. They said I need to do this, and I've said I can do it, but I don't know what it is.
Exactly. But that's what the fun comes in.
Too often, but it's a good example. But that kind of work ethic with you, it hasn't stopped, surely, because I remember chatting to you not that long ago, like before COVID, obviously though, about how you had to, because you get up at like 3:45 in the morning. Is that, yeah? To do there's no bags under there, honestly. To do the morning show, but then you get asked to do all these charity things, and all these galas that go on till 11 o'clock at night, or if not longer, and then you're having like 2 hours sleep to get up and do the radio the next day, and you just, like, I think you had 4 or 5 in a week once, and I was like, how are you still standing up?
Yeah.
How have you not collapsed or like fallen asleep at your desk?
I definitely, oh, that's probably happened. No, I definitely, have you ever heard the term the Thatcher gene? They used to talk famously about Margaret Thatcher only having 4 or 5 hours worth of sleep.
I've heard this,
uh,
yeah.
and that some people can just do it. And I have to admit, having done weird shift work for best part of 15 years now, there have been so many points where I thought it is going to hit me, something's going to happen. I'm either going to have some kind of breakdown because I'm sleep deprived, or something, I'm going to go just do lally or something. But touch wood, it hasn't happened yet. And I do just think I'm one of those people that I can go a certain length of time surviving on little sleep, but then what I find is roughly once every maybe 3 months, if I have a weekend completely to myself, I will just crash. And actually the weekend just gone, I mean Friday night just gone, I slept for 10 hours, and that just doesn't normally happen. And normally that's my body's way of going, okay, you've had your time, but now I need mine, so I'm going to keep you knocked out for 10 hours. You're probably going to have 2 naps on the Saturday, and then you're going to be in bed by 10 o'clock on the Saturday night, but that's fine, and then you're good to go again.
Goodness me, it sounds like you're living life on the edge in that kind of respect, because if your body's there going, right, stop, then it's to the point where you've maybe should have stopped a little bit before then. But you're so generous with your time, like you can't say no to stuff because you want to do all of these things, and I love and admire that spirit in you. But it's also
I think
then I'll carry on saying what I was going to say. You go.
Sorry, I'm terribly interrupted, Anna. I think that probably comes with almost a service ethic that was given to me by my parents. And like my dad was the hardest working man that I knew. And he did that because he knew he served his family, or at least that's how he was. He provided for his family, and he took that responsibility incredibly seriously. And my mum was she was a pharmacist. She worked in the NHS for 35 years. And I remember her always saying, patient care comes first, not targets, not making money. It's patient care. You've got to, I'm here working for the NHS, it's patient care. And I think for me personally, I'm dealing with license fee money, as we're always reminded, especially with what's going on in the news at the moment. And I do feel that sense of responsibility quite deeply. This is public money. We're paid for by the license fee. That's how I've got my job. That's how the radio station gets a budget. So you want to serve people. That's at least how I feel. I do feel quite passionately about that. That you've got to put some effort in, because we're not I don't want to mess around with people's money. Do you know what I mean?
I do, but it's not just that I wanted to talk to you about. It's all of the charity stuff that you say yes to, that you do on top of all the radio stuff. And this, once again, is like, how do you survive on so little sleep? Because you do so many amazing and interesting things. And I remember one of them, you were talking about the Wellington walk, where you had to walk a ridiculous amount of miles in Wellington Boots and still do your show, and your feet were killing you. You just had hardly any time to rest, because getting up early doing your show, but then having to walk however many miles a day, like it must have been grueling. But like, you raised so much for charity doing it, didn't you? Right, tell us that story, because it's brilliant.
I have to admit, that is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And when my producer came to me and said, I want you, and the thing is, compared to what some people do, and this is what I do want to say, compared to what you find some people doing when they walk from Land's End to John O'Groats, or I don't know, they swim goodness knows how far, the mileage at the time, I think the reason why I was a bit blasé with it, because I thought, all right, walking 15 miles every day for 5 days, I can do that because I've got all day. So yeah, that's okay, that's fine. And then he said in Wellington Boots, because I live in Wellington, in Somerset. And then obviously I thought, well, actually, then I've got to broadcast every day as well in the morning. So it was Monday to Friday, and my show at the time was 6 till 9. We were presenting shows on location, which were always on location. Filming is recording and live broadcasting is always incredibly draining, more so than being in the studio. And I remember we were probably living off about 3.5, 4 hours sleep a night, if that. So doing the shows, then I was continuing broadcasting throughout the rest of the day. I was doing telly stuff for Points West in the evening. Then there was an evening show until 10 o'clock when we were having parties and gatherings for members of the community to come and join us and help raise more money. And yeah, I have to admit, when all of that was done, but the thing is, I kept going. And I do believe there is this sort of superhuman strength that you can get. And again, especially when it's charity and when it's children in need, and you're hearing all of these stories of these kids and what they're going through, and they're kids, they're, 8, 9, some of them are 4 years old, and they're going through all of this stuff, and you're hearing it and you're thinking, all I've got to do is walk 15 miles today. It does keep you going. But we, at the end of it, we'd raised just a little bit over £20,000 in the 5 days, which is the most that sort of I've ever raised with a team working for the BBC. It was emotional, it was amazing. But I remember 4 o'clock Saturday morning, so I'd been doing the 5 days, 4 o'clock on the Saturday morning, I was staying in a hotel in Bridgewater where the walk had finished, and I'd woken up, this sounds disgusting, I was in head to toe a full-on body sweat. I was having slight hallucinations, and I just remember thinking, do I call an ambulance or do I call my boss? Do I try and get to the bathroom or do I stay in bed? And quite literally, that was my body going, you have just pushed yourself way too hard, or no sleep at all. And yeah, I was probably one of the poorest I think I've ever been. It was, I think, 2 massive blisters on the base of my feet, so I was like stumbling to the bathroom like this. But that day when my producer announced on air that we'd raised £20,000 for children in need, worth every moment of it.
So I guess you decided to go to the bathroom and then make a phone call. Which one was it?
Well, actually, weirdly, don't ask me why, again, seeing as I was on a full-on body sweat, I made a hot water bottle.
Right.
And then I went to the bathroom and I thought, am I okay? Tried to calm myself down because I think I was having a slight panic attack as well. Then I went back to bed, and then my friend Susie phoned me, who was on the walk with me. She was part of the support team, and she phoned me up at 8 o'clock in the morning. She said, how are you feeling? And I just went, you need to come and help me pack because I don't know what I'm doing. And she walked in and I was just like this zombie. Are you okay? I was like, no, I really don't think I am. It was quite funny looking back at it now, but at the time I didn't feel funny at all.
Oh my gosh. Well, at least you can laugh at it now, but maybe it's another lesson where you go, maybe I shouldn't quite push my body quite so far.
Yeah. My body hates me.
Quite so far. But that was probably the hardest one that you've done, you said. But then I've heard of pretty weird ones that you've done. What did you have to get into a bath that was full of, what now was it?
So shout out to, you may know this, Simpson's Fish and Chip Shop in Cheltenham.
Uh-huh.
They are great fish and chips. Others are available. But I remember they had this, for comic relief, they had this massive bathtub that they'd put at the front of their shop. Because at Simpson's, you can go and get your takeaway fish and chips, but you can also sit and eat it as a meal. So they put this big bathtub in there. And I knew one of their PR ladies, or know one of the PR ladies, and she messaged me and she said, look, will you come and sit in a bath full of batter for comic relief? And I was like, what do you mean?
Is this one of the examples where saying yes to everything is not a good idea? Is that the
100%. So she said, go on, it'll be a laugh. So I got in my comic relief t-shirt outfit thing, red nose the lot, and they just filled up this huge bath with batter. And I sat in that for a good hour at the front of their shop as people walked past and came in, and it was oddly soothing. But then I did realise that fish batter, even though it wasn't fishy at the time, clothes ruined. don't ever expect to get them out, get any of them
No.
out at all. They're ruined. So that was,
gone then.
yeah. If it's walking 75 miles in 5 days or sitting in batter, I know what's more comfortable. Put it that way.
Just you might keep your clothes from the days of walking and not from the batter.
Exactly.
Goodness
So
me.
you get some pretty wacky ones as well, which everything's good fun at the end of the day.
Well, you certainly have fun with it, and like everybody knows that you do, because you can hear it in your voice or on the radio. We get to see you on social media, because normally you don't get to see the person behind the voice. So that's another reason why I was happy to get you on a video podcast and talk to you. Can actually see you. But I know you've got tons of other stories from charity events that you've done. Can you tell us any more off the top of your head? Once again, putting you on the spot for stories.
Oh my word! I mean, I've done. One of my favourites was a pantomime that was written by the great Jack Murley, who now works in Cornwall, and he wrote it. It was a pantomime called Carterella, and I starred as the worker maid who was. I had a spell put on me. I think we all know the story. And I did go to the ball, and I did find my prince in the end. But yeah, we Alex Lovell from Points West was my fairy godmother, she was fantastic. And yeah, we learned, it was a 66-page script, and we put it all together in 6 weeks, and we put on 2 shows in one night. Which again, we're talking about just a bunch of broadcasters and producers and reporters, you know, all of this stuff. We had a musical director, we were singing and dancing, and we had like chorus lines behind us, you know, all this sort of stuff. So that was a big production, but it was great fun. And that's one of the things that I have to say I do love about this job. And I think also it's the reason why you do say yes to a lot of these things. You do get access to be able to do a lot of stuff that you may not normally get the chance to. I did an abseil in Taunton my first year here, and it was the most horrendous thing I've ever done in my life, and I hate heights, but I'm still glad that I did it in a really weird way, because it was an abseil and it was cool, and there were all these people there, and to see Taunton from that height and to experience that feeling, even though I hated it and wanted to be sick, you still feel quite privileged that you get to do all of those things. It was the big building, I forget what it's called, but the big tall one opposite the municipal offices, actually just a little way down from where the Somerset studios used to be. It's one of the tallest buildings in Taunton. You could have heard me scream for miles. I was standing at the top, literally screaming at the top of my lungs. It was horrendous. I'm glad I did it.
So proud of, though. I mean, conquering a fear like that.
It's awful. Honestly, heights, I'm like this. So when my producer's like, oh yeah, you're doing an abseil, is that okay? I'm like, yeah, fine. What? So yeah, basically my producer says you're doing this, and I'm like, okay, don't fight it.
Well, I guess that's that yes thing again. They go, oh, Claire will do it, we'll just get her to do it. And now it's like, you want me to do what? Abseil with heights, what?
Yeah.
You conquered it though.
Yeah, like I will do it. That's the thing. I will do most things within reason, and if I'm hating it whilst I'm doing it, there's almost this, and I think this is where the sportswoman in me comes out. There is this competitive nature that says, no, you will do this, you will try it at least once, so just get on and do it.
Good for you, I like that. But having heard what you've said yes to, what have you said no to?
What did I say no to? Ooh, I'm a bit funny with water, I have to admit. You'd be hard pushed to get me to do something that involves swimming in the sea. Because I'm at the age of 8, I saw Jaws, and that terrified the life out of me. So I'm that person. Have you also seen that Bond film where they push an informant or something into a swimming pool, and then the wall of the swimming pool opens and he gets eaten by sharks?
Oh.
Yeah, people that know their Bonds will remember that bit, and I remember seeing that as a young age as well. So I'm also that person that does believe sharks can get into swimming pools. I'm quite funny with water, so you'd probably be, you'd be hard pushed to get me to sort of swim the channel or something like that. But having said that, if it's for charity.
That's what's going to twist your arm. Go, oh, all right, then I'll do it. Yeah, that sounds about right. But talking about that sportswoman mentality, you've got that through playing netball mainly, haven't you?
Yeah. So I've played netball since I was 7 years old. So what's that, 25 years? Something like that. And netball will always be my first love. I remember being by the playground of my primary school. You couldn't start playing netball until you were 8 or 9, I think it was, at primary school. So until you were in sort of the upper years, you weren't allowed to join the team. And I just remember sitting there watching practice, going, come on, I want to be old enough. I want to be old enough. I just couldn't wait. And as soon as I started playing, I actually felt like for the first time something at school kind of clicked with me. I wasn't so much of an outsider. I was just shy and quiet, believe it or not, in my early years of school. But netball kind of felt like it was my thing. And I just felt at home. It all felt natural to me. And I have made some of my greatest friends, and I've had some of my greatest memories playing netball at various levels, at various times in my life. I love it. And I have to say, that's been one of the hardest things in lockdown and with this whole COVID-19 stuff, not being able to play netball, not being able to see the girls every week, is really difficult. And I think the sort of the selfish side of me is seeing all of these Sunday league football teams and tennis players and people going down a squash court, and I'm like, how comes they can play and we can't? And I, don't get me wrong, I get it, and I know these things have to happen in levels, but yeah, I'm missing netball quite a lot now.
What, so even though team sports are kind of allowed, netball isn't?
No, so it's all down to who plays outside, how much contact there is, and then also where I play now is at Exeter University. So you have government layers of guidelines, and that will then be interpreted and taken on by All England Netball, who then, if they think they need to put on extra layers to be extra careful, they'll do that, rightly so. But then there's also the layers of Exeter University, who have to think of their students first before they open up their facilities to outsiders, which you can understand. So there's layers of stuff, and it's, as I say, it's all for the right reasons. It's just frustrating for everybody, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when the announcement came in team sports, you must have been thinking, yes!
And then it's like, but not netball yet. I was like, okay, I can only go running so many times without getting completely bored.
Did you ever pursue netball as your main career, or did radio kind of take over?
No, I think, I mean, people that know me and know me playing will probably laugh when I say, you know, the dream was to play netball for England. I just wasn't disciplined enough. You've got to be not only physically strong to be a professional athlete or to play for your country, you've got to be mentally sound when it comes to how disciplined you are with training. And I just wasn't. I really wasn't. That was, you know, one of my biggest downfalls. And in part, I regret that, but I hope maybe everything happens for a reason. I don't know. But yeah, I definitely wanted to cover netball more. I used to sort of try and eke it into some of my programs at Radio Gloucestershire, and I certainly try my best here at Radio Somerset as well, to kind of go, oh, hey, have you seen this in the Super League? I think we need to speak to some people, you know. And anybody that listens to my breakfast show will know that I do bang on about netball quite a lot. But when you look at participation levels, and my dissertation was on women in sport media and how we're portrayed, but most importantly, how much coverage women's sport gets. You know, I'm quite passionate that people realise, you know, when you've got Sunday league football and rugby going on and golf courses filled up with men, those golf courses are also filled up with women, and you've got indoor courts which are filled up with generations of female netball players. You know, netball's one of few sports where you can get 3, maybe 4 generations of the same family playing on the same court. And I think that's astonishing and brilliant and should be celebrated and talked about.
I agree with you. I'm glad that you've been able to say it on the podcast.
Thank you. I just hope I haven't offended anybody and lost my job.
I know that you've said a lot about how things have, obviously you're not able to play netball yet, and things have impacted, COVID has impacted lots of things, but how has it impacted your job at radio?
Oh, so we had to make some pretty quick changes, and one of the biggest changes, I had an hour added on to my show. So where I used to do a 3-hour breakfast show, I now do a 4-hour breakfast show. So I'm on air now till 10 every weekday morning. And that was basically to kind of get station schedules in line. Lots of different local radio stations. We have 39 in the country for BBC Local Radio. And different stations used to broadcast programs at different times. And we realized that actually when COVID came, if one station was to get hit with a number of cases, that station may have to completely be closed down, but would still need to broadcast their airwaves. So we realized that by lining everybody up, so we were all broadcasting the same times, you could then adopt the broadcast of your sister station. So for example, if Somerset needs to be closed down, deep cleaned, we had a number of cases, we could take Radio Bristol and they could sort of share our airwaves, if you like, and look after them for us until we were able to go back to air. So that was probably the biggest change, adding an extra hour on. May not sound like much, but when you're talking almost every minute of 4 hours with a couple of tunes here or there in the first and the last hour, physically and mentally it can be quite tiring, quite exhausting, because you're upbeat, you're on it the whole time, because you're like, yeah, okay, I'm on the radio, woo. Not that annoying, but you know what I mean. So that's that sort of level of upholding that level of concentration for 4 hours straight without even so much as a minute to breathe and think about something else is quite intense. Obviously technology, that's affected all of us, because we couldn't have live interviews in the studio. We were learning new ways of trying to get people on the air. Zoom, how we've all come to know and love Zoom. We never ever used that as a way of getting somebody on the radio, but we had to learn it, we had to figure it out, we had to make our technology work for it. So in that respects, you know, our journalism coordinates that we have, what they call journalism coordinators, that's their job title, forgive me, you know, the new skills that they were having to learn technically for live shows was extraordinary. So that's been a huge change. And I think one of the biggest things that we've gone through is trying to make sure that you're covering a global pandemic that's affecting everybody, you're keeping it local, but then you're also trying to give them something else, because we've all reached that stage where we're like, do you know what, I can't talk about this anymore. The world feels so depressing. And I think especially at the beginning of lockdown, there was all this almost excitement. It was like the honeymoon period of lockdown. Everybody's baking banana bread, everybody's making tunes and putting them on the internet, and everybody's having a laugh and look at my garden, isn't it amazing? And then there was this period, and I could sense it on the radio, where everybody just kind of went, actually, this is bad, this is really tough, and I'm a bit fed up. I don't want to bake anymore, I don't want to binge Netflix anymore, I want to go out and see my family, I want to go out and sit in a beer garden with my friends, I want to go on that holiday to celebrate my 50th wedding anniversary. There was that real, and I could sense it, and it's being able to keep going and to broadcast through that, still trying to get the tone right and still trying to say to people it's okay, when actually maybe it's not okay, you just don't know. So there's been a huge amount of challenge, I think, on air for all broadcasters in that sense. But that's again why I love the people of Somerset, because more often than not they'll then phone up, tell me a joke, and we'll all be laughing. So yeah, it's been tough, but we're getting through it, we are getting through it, and we will get through it. But yeah, for everybody it's been, I think, the toughest year for a very long time.
Oh, absolutely, certainly one that we're going to remember. But the idea of somebody coming on and telling a joke on air must be so great, because I know so many people who just gave up on social media because it was just so harrowing. When you went on, it was like, I can't deal with this. Like at the beginning, I was on my phone far more than normal, just watching with, I don't know, intense curiosity at the world going down the toilet, going, what's going on? And then after a while, I was like, I can't look at this anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's a really hard call to make when you are for me personally, working for the BBC, doing the job that I do, again, felt this real responsibility of, I must go home, I must keep across social media, I must watch the 4 o'clock briefing so that I know what I'm doing. And it did get to a stage, I've got to be honest, and I was having a chat with one of my friends about this, because we used to, I don't know how much I should be admitting on this thing, but anyway, we'd get a glass of wine and watch the briefing. And it got to the stage where I thought, well, the briefing's every day, so this means I'm having a glass of wine every day, which I never drink during the week at all. And I thought to myself, I can't take this. And it got to about end of April, maybe. The briefing's still going on. Got to about the end of April, beginning of May. And I just thought, this is doing me no good, because I'm literally intensely focused on this for what feels like the whole day. And it's too much. It's too much. Nobody can do all of that. Whether you're Dan Walker or, you know, Emma Barnett on 5 Live, they may be doing it. I can't. I can't do this anymore. I can't watch this briefing anymore. And I remember the first day that I just thought, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to sit outside in my garden and I'm going to read a book. And I never read. I'm a terrible reader. I am a terrible reader. And I've now read 7 books since April. Because for me, I just thought, you got to be a sound mind and you got to look after yourself. And that means switching off. Sometimes you've got to do it. And yeah, it sounds awful. That was one of the best things I did, to stop watching the briefing. But I had to. It was too much.
You get it. I completely understand. And I'm sure a lot of people watching this will go, yeah, that makes sense. Because if you're living and breathing COVID every single day as part of your job, it must get to a point where you go, for my mental health, I need to switch off now.
And that's why when we talk about our key workers and our emergency services and our doctors and nurses and porters and healthcare assistants and carers who had just what they've done, I'm bowled over by them, because, you know, I think to be hearing the news every single day is hard. And I found that when you're hearing these sad stories or these tough stories and they're constant headlines and you can't avoid them. But that's my job. That's what I do, is part of it. When you're face to face with families and patients, that's got to be horrendous. So I don't know how they do it. Hats off to them.
No, I completely agree. I don't know how they do it either. Especially when at the beginning it was so difficult with the PPE that they needed as well. Trying to go into what was effectively a war zone with COVID without the proper PPE must have been really terrifying. As far as I'm aware, they've got that sorted in the UK now.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
We're good. We can rejoice in that. That's good. But yeah,
I just want to bring the mood down, don't I? I don't mean to.
Thing is, though, that's what you've been having to cope with every single day, with relaying those stories and with relaying the news and that kind of thing. So I do understand what you're saying. I mean, I try on my social media now to post what I need to post and reply to people who post on my things, but not get into the scrolling, because it's hard though, isn't it? Because the social media platforms, they train you to scroll. They're like, they honestly, they have things in place, people in place that are like, right, my sole job is to keep people on this platform and to keep them scrolling through everything. And so you do get into that where you look at the scrolling of your feed and you're like, how long have I been looking at this for? And then you think, oh, it's only been a couple of minutes, and then half an hour later you're like, am I still on my phone? It's really tricky. So I have been trying to stay away from it as much as I can, but the recent workload has meant that I've had to stay away from social media quite a lot, and I haven't kept up with my schedule that I set myself, because it's just been a bit but that's good. It's nice to be busy even if you are in a pandemic that shut down all your live work and all your stuff like that. So that is definitely a blessing. Have you got any sort of ideas as to what charity things you'll be able to get up to now that we're not able to get out and do things and we're not able to socialise as much as we want?
Do you know what? I actually have no idea. Again, this sort of goes back to the kind of the layers of guidelines that everybody has. And I think even if the government kind of maybe, hopefully one day comes out and says, hey, you can now do this and you can now do that. I still think schools and businesses and, you know, places have got to tread carefully, and they probably will do. And they may say, well, okay, even though the government said this, maybe we'll try this, and we'll kind of gradually. So yeah, when it comes to charity stuff, I've got absolutely no idea. I normally go out and give talks to, say, women's groups, or I don't know when that will be able to resume, because it all comes down to what I'm allowed to do and who I'm allowed to go out and see. And so again, that's one of the hardest parts of all of this. I just don't know. But I've been completely bowled over by the number of charities that I've spoken to who are being so creative with how they still want to try and fundraise, and they've talked about doing stuff virtually and things like that. So I don't know whether Radio Somerset can do anything virtually. I don't know. If anybody can, I'd like to think that we can, and we will make it work. But at this stage, I don't know.
Because I feel like if there is a creative idea out there, it would have come to you.
If anybody's got one, I find it impossible to say no. So there you go.
Unless it's with water. So no water ideas, but the other ones, send them in.
No, I'm not going I'm not going on a trawler's boat or whatever they're called. I'm not doing any of that. Thank you very much.
Because that is the scary thing, isn't it? Is that when we can't raise money for charities, where are they getting that money that they would normally get? And like the amount of charities that are struggling now because they can't do their regular fundraising events is very scary. You think about the impact that's going to have on the people that they raise the money for.
Yeah. So all these things that have the knock-on effect, or have had the knock-on effect because of COVID, things that I know we were talking earlier on, things that you don't necessarily think about. And yeah, it's affected the entire world. So it's quite scary. But as I say, there are some amazing people out there. Like, look at Captain Tom, Colonel, Captain, Sergeant Major.
Oh, I love him!
Tom, who is just extraordinary. You know, there are people like that all over the world, and all over Somerset, Gloucestershire, and up and down the UK. There are people like that everywhere. So they're the people that we need to keep showcasing in the media as well. They're the people that need the backing, because they're doing some good things.
Absolutely. And it's so nice to have good news stories to focus on when you have to relay the harrowing information as well. To have good news stories, you must be like, as soon as one comes across your desk, you're like, yes.
Was it last week? We had this random story of a baby boom at Longleat Safari Park for flamingos. There's just been
brilliant story.
In this huge baby boom. So I didn't get this. I didn't know this before. So flamingos, it's hit or miss as to whether or not they're going to reproduce every year. So last year at Longleat, no baby chicks. They didn't lay a single thing. Or if they did, sadly, the chicks didn't survive. This year, they've had like 30. They are just popping them out. It's this huge baby boom of flamingo chicks. So I was like, we are getting Longleat Safari on the show. So this lovely woman called, her name Amy, she came on, she's like head of birds, she's amazing, and she gets to look after all the flamingos, and we were just having this lovely chat, and she was like, yeah, we've got loads of flamingos. I was like, great, that is the news that we need.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, you do get stories like that as well, which is cool.
What a cool job as well, head of like birds at Longleat Safari Park. They've
got a head of carnivores as well.
Woo.
Yeah, it's great.
That sounds like we're going back to Jurassic Park kind of times. That's where the new Jurassic Park is going to spring up in Longleat.
Brilliant. Get them there. Be great. So yeah. So you have got some good stories as well.
Yeah, like the little girl as well. That 7-year-old girl cycling 100 miles. That's just amazing. And you talk about people finding that inner strength from somewhere where they know they're doing something for the greater good.
Oh yeah.
Have a 7-year-old find that much strength to do 100 miles over 2 days. Like,
yeah. But it's the fact that often it comes off their own back as well. So I've spoken to a lot of parents as well that have said, it was my child that came to me. They said, I want to save the orangutans. So what can I do? And you kind of almost hear it in the parent's voice going, I don't know. And then it's fear that says, I'm going to have to do it with them. Which is lovely. But yeah, these kids they're switched on. You know, I know the younger generations, they do get a lot of stick. And I will always say no generation is perfect. Nobody's perfect, but I think there are so many good youngsters out there that do identify issues that we've got. They do want to make a difference and try and change a few things. And they're proactive enough to go out there and try and do it. And yeah, when you get these children that are just, and they're so quick-witted. And when I spoke to this Audrey, her name's Audrey, this 7-year-old, I said to her, I went, Audrey, age 7 and you cycled 100 miles in 2 days. I said, how did you feel afterwards? Thinking she'd say, oh, my legs hurt a bit, or, you know. And she just went, pretty amazed with myself. And I was like, yes, of course you did. She was like, yeah, I felt pretty amazing. And I was like, yeah, good for you. You need to hold on to that feeling. And yeah, they're great fun to speak to. They really are.
Oh my gosh, she sounds adorable, Audrey. She really does. Oh my gosh, she does sound amazing. I'm going to do a quick Google now. I'm going to see if I can find the link for donating to Audrey and to her charity, WWF, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah. I think, if not, I'll share it on my Twitter feed. So if you have a look there later, it should be on there, because I think she's got a Twitter account set up as well.
Okay, great. Let's see how much more we can add to her total. She's so brilliant. But I know the other thing you've been doing to keep our minds off COVID things is you've got that, what's that sound going on? The latest one, honestly, like, that was the sugar packet one. That was so hard. Like, how many days was it that people were guessing that?
This is going to be my legacy. So there's, I mean, it is an age-old radio game. I think almost every station has probably done this, but they do it because it works and it's good fun.
It is good fun.
It sounds familiar. And I basically just record myself making a sound somehow, and you got to tell me what it is. And the main hook is, if you don't get it right by the end of the show, it rolls over to the next day, and we keep going until somebody gets it right. And I remember when I first started playing this game a couple of years ago, the longest we've ever gone is 33 programs of this same noise. And we were getting, yeah, we were just bombarded with text messages at 6:30 in the morning when we used to play this game. And it was hilarious. And I'll never forget, I had some issues with my water bill here for various reasons. And anyway, it wasn't really anybody's fault, but I was having to go through the water board and everything. And it took a couple of weeks to sort out. And I remember I got this phone call from the water company. It was this woman, really nice lady. And she was kind of talking away, okay, we're going to sort this out, and blah, 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 blah. And then she said about sort of 10, 15 minutes into the conversation, she said, can I just ask, so you're Claire Carter, do you present on BBC Somerset? And sometimes I always get a little bit nervous when kind of your private life and when you're dealing with bills and stuff like that, it kind of merges with what you do. And, you know, and I kind of sort of said, yes. And she went, you do the breakfast show? Yes. I thought, oh my God, where is this going to go? Is she going to complain? Have I said something that she doesn't like? You know, so I started to panic, and she just went, you had a sound that went for 33 days and I missed what the answer was. What was it? I've been dying to know, like this. And it was this really weird moment. I was like, I'm trying to sort out my water bill, and the regional manager or whatever of the water company is asking me what the sounds familiar answer was. And we just roared with laughter, because I don't know, I think, again, it's just that bit of escapism that people want sometimes, that it's just a bit of naff fun that's harmless, that gets under your skin a little bit. So it's that level between fun and annoying.
It's already there for me. What was the 33-day one? Because I don't know what that was.
33-day one, it was actually quite hard. So you know when you buy a box of AA batteries?
Yeah.
I was tipping the box up and down, and it was the sound of the
that is a tricky one.
That was actually probably one of the hardest ones I think we've ever done. So but I actually find that, because we've been playing the game for so long, I will walk around my room going, what do I do? And people go, why don't you do this? Done it. Have you tried this? Done it. Have you pulled a tissue out of a tissue? Done it. So it's actually becoming really hard to find and create sounds now of everyday life. But
How
yeah,
did
it's good.
the badminton racket one take? Because we were playing badminton and you recorded that falling on the sports hall floor.
I think that was a 2-day wonder. But what gives it away sometimes is if prior to me doing it, I say things like, oh, I went to play badminton with my friend Mary-Jess. Then people have learned to listen to my stories and they go, well, she was playing badminton, so could it be a badminton racket? And they've become like Sherlock, honestly.
Oh dear. Well, the sugar packet one was pretty good, wasn't it? That was 20
21 days, I think,
21
just
days.
shaking a sugar packet.
Yeah.
21 days of pure fun and enjoyment.
And then when somebody gets it right, they have the honour of guessing the right one and being able to tell you on the radio, don't they?
That's because I work for the BBC and we have no budget to let me have prizes to give away. So we work for pride, people. Come on.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. So we can listen to your Sounds Familiar on BBC Radio Somerset on your breakfast show. So make sure you guys check that out because it is such a fun show. And I love the music that you play as well. It's such a great variety that you've got on there. And I've got to say, I've just so enjoyed this. I keep wanting to come up with more questions so that we can carry on going.
The joy of interviewing, see, this is when, and this is a part I love. It's a bit like, I never quite understood why people would want to be the referee of a match or an umpire of a match, because I always wanted to be the player. And sometimes when people watch the Oscars, they want to be the actor or the actress going up to collect the award. But I've always been interested in the host, and I've always loved the monologues. And rather than being the actress to go up and collect the award, I'd always want to be the host. And I think that was probably an early sign that I missed growing up. That, yeah, I wasn't meant to be a PE teacher. I was supposed to do something else.
And thankfully, by not being a PE teacher, you have raised thousands of pounds for charity. You brighten everybody's day with your show and with your lovely radio voice. And you've certainly brightened my day as well by coming on and enabling us to catch up, because with COVID, we haven't been able to have badminton matches at all.
One day we will be back, one day. But no, honestly, it's been lovely. And it's great that you've been obviously sharing what you've been doing. And this is actually where I think music has come into its own. And I hope that people have really appreciated what our artists do and the music that you make and put out there, and how we can support you as well. Because, you know, for arts and theatre and that whole sector, I think it's been such a tough time when actually we turn to music at times like this to help lift us. So thanks for what you do.
Well, thank you so much for coming and joining me on the podcast, Claire Carter. It's been such a joy to talk to you, and I will speak to you again soon. So thanks so much.
Take care.
Bye.